All right, so you guys wanted to know what's up with the San Jose State University women's volleyball team.
And let me tell you, diving into this one was, well, intense.
Yeah, we're talking college athletics, fairness, politics. You name it, it's in here.
It really highlights how gender identity is changing sport.
Absolutely. And this isn't just about one team or one athlete.
No, this goes way beyond that. It's about bigger questions.
Yeah.
About inclusion, competition at every level of the game.
And the situation at San Jose State, it's complicated, to say the least. I mean, we had multiple universities, Boise State, Southern Utah.
Utah State, Wyoming.
Right, all forfeiting their matches against SJSU.
And they all danced around the reason why, but it's pretty clear.
It's the transgender athlete on the SJSU roster.
Yeah, and it's like nobody wants to actually say it out loud.
That's like everyone's walking on eggshells. And then there's the University of Nevada. Talk about a tough spot.
Oh, man.
Their team captain even said publicly that she was worried about safety and fair competition.
Which brings us to a really important point. See, Nevada has a state law, and that law says you can't forfeit a game based on gender identity or expression.
Wow. So they had to choose between, what, their beliefs and the law?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about the pressure on those athletes and coaches.
No kidding. So what happened? Did they forfeit?
They ended up playing. But the fact that it was even a question, that they even thought about it.
It speaks volumes.
For sure.
And this isn't just happening in a bubble. It's part of a much bigger conversation happening all over the country right now, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
We've got this wave of legislation, all this public debate, especially when it comes to transgender athletes in women's sports.
Yeah, it's everywhere you look.
And you can't ignore that context. This case at SJSU, it's like a flashpoint. All those national anxieties, all that misinformation, it's playing out in a very real way.
With real people.
Right. And that's where things get, well, to be honest, heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking is. No, that's a good word for it. We're talking about real people dealing with some incredibly tough stuff.
Yep.
And it's not just the athletes, right? Even the Mountain West Conference is trying to figure out where they stand on all of this.
Yeah, Gloria Navarra, as the commissioner, she's really been outspoken about the whole thing, seems really concerned, especially about these forfeits and how much attention this has gotten,
It's definitely blown up.
Totally. But, I give her credit. She keeps bringing it back to the student athletes and how this is affecting them, their well-being. It's easy to lose sight of that with all the politics surrounding it.
Because it was only a matter of time before the politicians jumped in.
Right.
And Trump, well, he didn't disappoint.
No. And his comments, they just show how dangerous this misinformation can be. He brought up this one play, claimed the transgender athlete's spike had actually injured the other player.
Which wasn't true at all. San Diego State even had to put out a statement, set the record straight, said their player was completely fine.
Makes you wonder, about the motives behind some of this. Are people really concerned about fairness in sports, or are they just using this as a platform?
A good question. But in the middle of all that noise, the statements from SJSU's coach, Todd Kress, they really stood out to me. You could really hear the emotion in his voice. He talked about the toll this is taking on his team.
And especially on the transgender athlete. I mean, she's been targeted with some really vicious stuff online. Kress was very clear about that, condemned the attacks.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Words have power.
They do. This isn't just some theoretical debate. This is affecting people's lives in a real way.
It is. And it brings us to that central question, doesn't it? How do we make college sports, how do we make society as a whole a place where everyone feels safe, respected, where everyone feels like they can compete as their true selves? And that's, I don't know, that feels like a really important question.
Hugely important. And incredibly complicated.
It is complicated. So where do we even go from here? What does this mean for the future of college sports?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole situation with San Jose State, it really shows we're in uncharted territory here. Take the NCAA, for example.
They have that policy on transgender athletes.
They do, but it's really complex.
Yeah.
And it's being tested now in ways nobody could have imagined a few years ago.
It's true. It seems like everyone's just trying to figure things out as they go.
Yeah.
Which probably doesn't help with all the
confusion, frustration.
Oh,
yeah.
Exactly.
And we have to remember, this whole debate about transgender athletes, it's really just a small part of a much bigger conversation about how we see gender identity. As a society, we're all trying to be more inclusive, more equitable. But the answers, they aren't always clear-cut.
You said equitable, and it made me think, has our definition of fairness changed too? alongside how we view gender. I mean, what does fairness even mean in this context?
It's a great question, and it goes beyond just, physical abilities, right? What about the years of training, the dedication, the mental toughness you need to compete at that level?
That's a good point.
These are all part of what makes an athlete successful. And that's true no matter their gender identity.
So how do we move forward? How do we make sure everyone feels heard and respected, but also protect the integrity of competition?
I don't think there's one solution that magically fixes everything, but I do think it starts with talking to each other,
Yeah.
honestly and openly. We need to create those spaces where athletes, coaches, medical experts, and everyone, even people who disagree, where they can talk respectfully.
Because all the arguing on social media, that's not helping.
Nope, not at all. It's about listening, really listening. It's about educating ourselves and realizing that this issue is complicated. And it's about acknowledging that there are real, valid concerns on all sides, and then figuring out how to address them with compassion, with a desire to find some kind of common ground.
Yeah. That's easier said than done, I think.
It definitely is. But it's a goal worth working towards, right?
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up, is there one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Don't fall for easy answers to difficult questions. Because this isn't about choosing a side. It's about recognizing that there are real people at the heart of this, people with real experiences. And we have to approach this conversation with empathy, with a willingness to learn and understand. We have to be willing to listen to each other. Maybe then we can start to build a world and create a culture in sports where everyone feels like they belong, where everyone has the opportunity to succeed.
That's a great point. And a good reminder that this conversation doesn't end when the podcast does. So to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has given you something to think about. Keep asking those tough questions. Keep the conversation going. And we'll be back next time with another deep dive.